Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. When it comes to fulfilling your potential and setting goals in your life as an investor or just as a human being, what are those specific actions that it takes to turn what you thought was impossible into the inevitable? We dive into the depths of your mindset, your productivity, and what is really possible for you with Miracle Morning author Hal Elrod today on Get Rich Education. Congress just made it possible to get up to $100,000 out of your current 401k or TSP to invest in real estate, gold, or even your own business. That's even if you're still working, and avoid the IRA UBIT tax. The thing is, you can get your money tax and penalty free for a limited time. The EQRP is your secret weapon. With the CARES Act expiring soon, the EQRP company helps you unleash your retirement funds now. Learn more and text message EQRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from California's balmy Channel Islands to the ice-choked glacial fjords of Chilean Patagonia, through the Americas and across 188 nations worldwide. Now we're in our 7th year of broadcasting. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. With your mindset and productivity on the way to your goal, motivation and change comes from within. Maybe your goal is owning 100 rental doors. How significant would you feel as a person if you provided housing to 100 families? Or maybe it's more financial. Maybe you're in real estate for the income, where you will continue to make tax-deferred exchanges until you've traded up to larger properties, until you have, say, $15,000 in monthly cash flow, if that's your goal. You know, the late business philosopher Jim Rohn had something very interesting and powerful to say about the pursuit of money, and it's just 6 simple, powerful words. Money is usually attracted, not pursued. Yeah, there is so much to be said for that right there. Not only is that true if you're building your brand as a real estate investor, and people will be attracted to you and eventually give you the better opportunities for deals if you have a good reputation. Yes, indeed, money is usually attracted, not pursued. That's even true in the world of climbing the corporate ladder. If you keep bugging your boss for a pay raise, well, pretty soon you look desperate and it's not so appealing to give you a raise. But if you continually demonstrate that you're a valuable employee, over time that you're so valuable you cannot even be replaced, well, then you can see how money gets attracted to you rather than pursued by you. Now, when it comes to achieving more in life, one thing I do not say is that, it's just mindset. No, it's not just mindset. We don't want to diminish that. If one has a limiting mindset, that is a major problem, since it all begins right there. Napoleon Hill said, "Your only limitations are those that you set up in your own mind." Yeah, that right there is just ridiculously true. If you think that you have a soul-sucking job and you're frustrated that you trade your time for dollars, but you're only surrounded by a circle of friends in this peer group and others that also trade their time for dollars, well, then it's easy to think that there is some sort of limitation there and that you just always have to do that and you just always have to show up at that job. But showing up to do something that you don't like doing is actually completely voluntary on your part. And I would know because I used to do that. You know, something interesting that I encounter just once in a while, but a number of times over the years now, I have a person say something to me like, they see where I travel or I do these adventure hikes or exercise, and then they tell me something like, "Gosh, you live a really great life." Then I sort of pause when I hear that. I don't quite know what to say for a second, And then on the outside, I might just blurt out something to that person like, oh, well, yeah, thanks. But on the inside, you know what I'm thinking? And what I would want to say is, well, of course I live a fairly good life, because living a good life is a choice. And why would I choose anything less than a good life or a great life? So maybe I'm externally gracious, but internally I'm kind of confused because you have the autonomy to design your own life. It seems like a lot of people believe something else, like they're in servitude to these limiting beliefs. And these limiting beliefs are really the product of social conditioning that they've been subjected to earlier in their life. Now, a big part of success is your long-term thinking, and that even does intersect with physical health. I'm around quite a few entrepreneur types, and sometimes I see something like, well, here's something that I saw posted on social media not too long ago. This entrepreneur posted something like, I'm hustling so hard that I barely sleep 3 hours a night anymore. And then that remark got its requisite number of social media likes from his followers or whatever. Seeing something like that leaves me thinking, oh, really? So hustle over health? I mean, sometimes people have got to do what they've got to do in the short term, but publicly stating that you're hustling so hard that you're barely sleeping 3 hours a night and framing that in some sort of way like it's aspirational, that just sounds unhealthy. Look, just imagine this, okay? Imagine if there were some magic potion, some secret elixir that you could take daily, and it would refresh your mind, and it would repair your physical body at the same time, magically. Well, that elixir is nothing magical. It is called sleep. I sleep 7 to 8 hours per night, and sometimes I take a 5-minute afternoon nap too. That's the foundation of having a good day, at least for me. Now, I've heard today's guest, Hal Elrod, say something that I agree with and practice as well. Don't start your day with coffee. Start with water. Your skin is the largest organ in your body, and your body's largest organ is also your most visible organ, your skin. It's on the outside. So hydrate and take care of that largest organ of your skin first thing. And by the way, this doesn't mean that you can't have coffee in the morning. I think you can, and I sure do, but I start with water. It's water first. Miracle Morning author Hal Elrod has more than 500,000 people worldwide that follow his prescribed practices. A big part of that is what he calls lifesavers.
You are unwise to lower your defenses.
No, not lightsabers, but lifesavers. SAVERS. It stands for silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. That's part of Hal Elrod and the Miracle Morning. He has quite an awe-inspiring story. We'll hear it straight ahead on Get Rich Education. Most rental property investors choose either positive cash flow or home price appreciation, but one real estate market can provide both. Jacksonville, Florida. With 9% lower home prices than the national median, 1% higher gross rents, and Jacksonville has appreciated 34% more than other comparable cash flow markets since 1991. Get positive cash flow today and appreciation for tomorrow. To invest for cash flow and growth in Jacksonville, go to cashflowandgrowth.com. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They provided you with more loans than anyone. It's where I got my last few loans, and they finance single-family income property up to 4plexes. They're the #1 lender for both beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and you'll end up with your custom plan for expanding your cash flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. And the reason I respect Keith, he's a very strong, smart, bright young man.
After surviving multiple near-death experiences and impacting millions of lives through his books, this week's guest is on a mission to elevate the consciousness of humanity one person at a time. He's the author of the landmark book, The Miracle Morning. You've probably heard of that or read it because it's been translated into 37 languages and it's sold more than 2 million copies. And talk about an impact. This is rare. Over 500,000 people around the world are actively practicing his work daily. There's also a book called The Miracle Morning for real estate agents, but his newest book is called The Miracle Equation. So welcome to Get Rich Education, Hal Elrod.
Hey, it is a pleasure, Keith. Thank you for having me today, man.
It's so good to have you here. And Hal, you had some astoundingly unfortunate occurrences earlier in your life, and even a few years ago where you went through some major health issues. So can you talk about how you managed to overcome these occurrences and how that helped develop the mindset that you have today, Hal?
Lately, I've been calling them wake-up calls. And I think we all have multiple wake-up calls throughout our lives, and they are often in the form of an adversity, right? You go through a really difficult time, and it's a wake-up call, either that you need to change or something in your life needs to change. And when I was 20 years old, I was driving home after giving a speech at a sales meeting. I was one of the top sales reps for Cutco Cutlery, and I gave a speech at pretty much all of our events. And one night, after I gave a speech, I was driving home, again, 20 years old, and my Ford Mustang was hit head on by a drunk driver at over 70 miles per hour in a full-size Chevy truck. And the worst was actually yet to come as my car spun off of the drunk driver and the car behind me crashed into my door at 70 miles an hour and smashed the left side of my body. Instantaneously, I broke 11 bones and I bled to death. I was clinically dead when the paramedics pulled me out of the car for approximately 6 minutes, rushed to the hospital. I spent 6 days in a coma and I flatlined twice more and woke up to be told I would never walk again and that I had permanent brain damage and no short-term memory. And I had to face this reality that we all have to face, right? Which is sometimes things don't go according to plan. And this was pretty extreme, but it was, okay, if I never walk again, what is my life going to be like? What will that be like? And I was faced with the choice essentially that we're all faced with in the midst of adversity, which is, am I going to let that define me? Am I going to let my circumstances determine my mental and emotional well-being? Or am I going to choose what I want to experience? And so for me, I decided if I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, like the doctors are saying, I'm going to make the conscious choice to be the happiest, most grateful person that you've ever seen in a wheelchair, because I'm in a wheelchair either way. You can apply that wheelchair. You know, what's your wheelchair? If you're listening to this, like, what's your wheelchair? What's the experience in your life that's out of your control, either past, present, or potentially that you're worried about for the future, that you have the choice not to change the circumstance because it's already happened or it's already happening, but you get to choose, how does it impact you? Does it destroy you? Does it define you? Does it encourage you to learn, grow, and become better than you've ever been before? Because I think every adversity serves as an opportunity for all of us to learn, grow, and become better than we've ever been before. This whole philosophy that I'm talking about that I developed when I was 20, and by the way, the doctors thought I was in denial because I was so happy in the hospital. They're like, this kid's losing it. Like, he obviously isn't facing reality. But the reality was I had fully faced reality. I had accepted it unconditionally and wasn't wishing it were different, because that wishing and wanting that we often do when circumstances don't meet our expectation, that wishing and wanting, it's a form of delusion, right? It doesn't change the thing that we're wishing didn't happen. It happened. And the only choice we have is how we're going to respond to it. And so 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a really rare aggressive form of cancer and given a 10 to 30% chance of surviving. As a father of 2 children, at the time, my 7-year-old daughter and my 4-year-old son, there was nothing more difficult than hearing that. But the day I was diagnosed, I called my wife. She was actually out of town. I told her the news. Sweetie, I've been diagnosed with this rare aggressive cancer. I have a 10 to 30% chance of surviving. And at that point, my lungs were failing, my kidneys were failing, and my heart was failing, which is why I went into the hospital. I told her, I said, sweetheart, I know this is difficult. You know, she's bawling, she's crying, she's distraught. And I said, I can't imagine what this is like for you, but I want you to know the decision I made in my car accident, I promise you, I will be the happiest, most grateful I have ever been while I endure what I would imagine is the most difficult time in my life and in our lives. And it was the most difficult time, but I was genuinely grateful for every moment, because I was looking for, how can I learn? How can I grow? How can I become stronger and better than I've been before? as a result of how I respond so positively and proactively to this difficult challenge. And once again, it kind of defied the logic of doctors, and I was able to beat the cancer. And I got off chemo like 3 months ago and feeling good.
That is a remarkable story. And these are some astounding wake-up calls. There's sort of that feeling where the closer you are to death, the more alive you feel sort of feeling. You do mention that analogy of a wheelchair and being in a wheelchair. I really think that we all have our own mental wheelchair. And really this mental wheelchair are these self-imposed limits. They come from us. These limits that we have put on ourselves really primarily exist only in our imagination.
I completely agree. I mean, I think that there are two worlds that we live in. There's the outer world and there's the inner world. The outer world defines everything in our outer world, and it includes our body. So the inner world's our mind, our spirit. But for example, my body, I would have called that the outer world. Like my body was broken, my legs were broken, my arm was broken. But my inner world, that mental and emotional well-being, that's where we have control. And it's really the only thing and the last thing that we have control over. In fact, one of my favorite books, Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. He was a Nazi concentration camp survivor. And at 31 years old, he was in the concentration camp watching his peers be taken to the gas chambers and beaten and killed, and they were starved, and it was just horrific circumstances. The quote that stuck with me from that book was that the last of humans' freedom is to choose one's own attitude in any given set of circumstances. It's exactly what I'm talking about and what you're talking about, which is we create our limitations, we create our drama, we create our emotional pain. And the last thing I'll say is that one of the most important lessons that I learned is the way I was able to free myself from emotional pain during the car accident, during cancer, and just every day during things like traffic, is I realized that my emotional pain was not created by anything outside of myself, but all emotional pain that we've ever experienced is self-created by our resistance to our reality. And it's to the degree that we resist reality, in other words, that we wish and want something that we're out of our control to be different, that we create emotional pain. Many philosophers and Stoics and Buddhism teaches the key to emotional freedom is acceptance, unconditional acceptance, where you accept life exactly as it is, not wishing it were any different, but just finding the meaning, the gratitude, the peace within our challenges, and then we're free to experience them as we choose.
How you think of yourself on the inside has got to eventually, sooner or later, manifest itself on the outside. And a lot of people are concerned with what others think about them, but I don't know if there's really any thought paradigm more important to a person in making more of themselves than how they think about themselves. And that had to be part of your turning point in coming out of these adverse circumstances. And I know, Hal, that you liken a lot of this to a miracle. And I'd like you to talk about how you think of a miracle, because I think of a miracle as some extraordinary event that can't be explained by natural law or scientific law, but really the work of perhaps maybe even some sort of divine intervention. So how do you define a miracle?
I think that's a really loaded word. And I think there's more than one definition. Most people think of a miracle as something that's out of their control. It's like I pray for a miracle, and then I sit back passively and I hope that my prayers are answered and the miracle comes true. For me, ever since the car accident, and maybe before, but I've always believed that the moment we take responsibility for everything in our life is the moment we have the power to change anything in our life. And maybe it's more accurate to say that it's to the degree that we accept responsibility for every aspect of our life determines the degree of power that we have to make changes in any area of our life. And so when I was in the car accident, instead of sitting back and saying, I have no control over the situation, God, please, make a miracle happen. And by the way, did I pray every day? Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. But the way I like to define a miracle is one that we have a degree of control over. And so I define a miracle as any meaningful outcome that is beyond the realm of what we currently believe is probable for us. Any meaningful outcome beyond the realm of what we currently believe is probable for us. And let me kind of break that down a little bit. So any meaningful outcome, obviously, walking again for me was a meaningful outcome. Beating cancer and being alive for my family was a meaningful outcome. If you go back to the miracle morning, changing 1 million lives one morning at a time. That was the original mission, the goal of the Miracle Morning. Reaching 1 million people as a self-published author, that was a freaking miracle. Like, that was a meaningful outcome beyond the realm of what I thought was probable for me. And I want to break that part down, the word probable. I didn't say possible. I didn't say an outcome that was possible for me, because very rarely do we pursue that which is possible. We pursue that which is probable. When was the last time that someone said, yeah, I think the odds of me reaching this goal are slim to none, so I'm dedicating my entire life to it, right?
Part of conventional goal setting is it has to feel relatively attainable.
Attainable, right? And so for me, like the new book, The Miracle Equation, the subtitle, it sums it up really well. It's the 2 decisions that move your biggest goals from possible to probable to inevitable. When I say a miracle is any meaningful outcome that's beyond the realm of what you think is probable for you, thus, when you achieve that outcome, it feels like a, quote, miracle. And so for me, walking in was a miracle. So I asked myself, what's in my control? What can I do to move in the direction of that outcome? Number 1 was prayer, right? I prayed about it every single day. Number 2 was visualization. I visualized walking every day. I will say this, back then I hadn't read on the science of this as much, read up on the science, but there's a lot of science now that shows the mind-body connection, that shows whatever thoughts you think consistently, whatever emotions you experience or create for yourself consistently have a biological effect on your body. You can literally, stress, for example, breaks the body down, and it even causes cancer cells. But when you're in a peaceful state, you can heal your body. I don't have a graph that shows you how my emotional state and my bones healing paralleled each other, but I can just tell you, from the day that I woke up from the coma, or at least within a few days, I had decided, I know the doctors say I'm not going to walk again, but the doctors may be experts in medicine. They're not experts in me, though. And I'm going to maintain unwavering faith that I will walk again. In fact, the Miracle Equation, again, it's the 2 decisions that move your biggest goals from possible to probable to inevitable. The first decision is unwavering faith, to maintain unwavering faith in whatever it is, whatever outcomes you're committed to in your life. Unwavering faith, which is simply, and for me, it's always in writing. It's always in the form of like an affirmation that says, I am committed to blank. And the blank is every meaningful outcome in my life. So I've got these commitments, this unwavering faith in goals around my health, my fitness, my family, my finances, my career, my mission in the world, all of these things. And the first element is to reinforce the unwavering faith that's necessary to keep me moving toward the outcomes that are most meaningful to me. And if you think about what's the opposite of faith, I would call it fear. When we live in fear, which many of us do, often it's very subtle. We're not even aware that we have this fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of trying and then embarrassing ourselves, right? There's all these fears. For all of us, we have to replace that fear with faith. And making it unwavering means that I am committed. I will maintain unwavering faith that I can achieve this outcome no matter what. There is no other option. And those are the literal words that are in my affirmations, where I affirm I'm committed to blank no matter what. There is no other option. And then we can get into the rest of the equation beyond that. But again, that's the mindset. I want to say last thing on this, then I'll turn it over to you, Keith. I think a lot of people have trouble with faith because, again, we only pursue that which is probable. So therefore, most people go, well, I'm not going to maintain faith unless I know it's a certainty, because I feel like I'm setting myself up for disappointment and failure if it doesn't happen. Here's what you have to understand. Faith is not a guaranteed. It doesn't guarantee the outcome. It increases your probability. There's that word again, right? Probable. It increases your probability of reaching the outcome. And I'll give you the best example that I can. I love to think of sports in this way. Think about the best athletes in sports. And I'll use Michael Jordan as an example, right? Growing up, Michael Jordan was the pinnacle, right? For most of us.
We all relate to him.
And I believe in one way or another, Michael Jordan or any elite athlete at some point in their career made a decision, and maybe it was a coach that instilled the confidence in them, the faith, that I can make every shot that I take. See, most human beings, we face doubt every time the ball hits our hands, right? To use the basketball analogy, ball hits our hands, Oh, I hope I don't miss it. I hope I don't miss it. I hope I don't miss it. And if we miss it, our fear increases and our faith diminishes. And you go, oh man, I missed it. No, I don't know if I should shoot again. I'm really scared. The ball hits our hands again. We have even more fear and even less faith. And if we miss that shot, forget it. We don't want the ball again. Most of us don't live with unwavering faith, but I believe the most elite athletes in the world, the most elite performers in all walks of life, live with unwavering faith that they can make every shot that they take, literally or metaphorically. So Michael Jordan says, give me the ball. And he believes in his mind, there is no doubt in his mind that he's going to make the shot, even though he's well aware that he doesn't make every shot that he takes. But that doesn't change that he approaches every shot and consider a shot in your life as an opportunity to approach every opportunity with unwavering faith. And so he takes a shot with unwavering faith. And if he misses it, his faith doesn't waver. He wants the ball again on the next play. And if he misses that one, he wants the ball again on the next play. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, some of the best players in the world. I've seen them miss like 17 shots in the first 3 quarters. And while most human beings, the average human being that doesn't consciously live with unwavering faith, they go, dude, I'm cold tonight. Do not give me the ball, right? And they just pass it off every time they get it. Not the Jordans, not the LeBrons, not the Kobes. They want the ball until the final second. It begins with making a conscious decision that I will maintain unwavering faith, that I will make every shot that I take, that I can reach every goal that I set, that I can maximize every opportunity put in front of me, even though we know nobody makes all the shots they take. Nobody succeeds every time. But those that live with unwavering faith, they increase their probability of success many times over, and they end up winning more often than not.
Oh, there's just so much to touch on there. Yeah, it starts with that self-belief that if you're Michael Jordan and you're down 2 points and you need to drain a 3-pointer with 1.5 seconds left, it starts with that belief that you're going to do it. And when you have belief, other people around you, Scottie Pippen, whoever it is, fans, they start believing in you too. But yeah, it really starts with having that commitment. And I think of commitment as being loyal to what you said you were going to do long after the mood has left you. I think you mentioned writing it down. I mean, that sure helps make something concrete. That solidifies a commitment. There's so much this has to do with fear and failure, Hal. So let's talk a bit more about failure. And I think failure is something that we can all relate to. You talk about the basketball example, and I can certainly relate to failure, maybe all too frequently. I had the fear of failure when I bought my first ever 4-plex apartment building, maybe an impossibly attractive woman that I've struck out with. Maybe I'm not reaching the 5K running race time that I want to, and I have the fear of failure again there. But you talk about a way to redefine goals that really makes it impossible to fail and removes that fear of failure. So can you talk more about removing that fear of failure? In that way, we'll be more emboldened as we set our goals.
This is a philosophy that I learned from my mentor, Dan Cassetta. In the way I understand it, the way I remember it, is that the real purpose of a goal is not to actually reach the goal. The real purpose of a goal is in the greatest benefit that you can attain from goal setting isn't to reach the goal. It's to become the type of person who has the qualities and characteristics of someone who can achieve goals. So in other words, when you set the goal, whether or not you achieve it is secondary to how you approach the goal. And if you approach the goal with unwavering faith and you give extraordinary effort toward achieving it, you put forth everything in your power to achieve the goal, then in doing so, you become a better version of yourself. You become more capable. You develop a mindset of qualities like consistency and resiliency and commitment and follow through. You create all these habits in your life and this mindset that serve you long beyond that individual goal. I'll give you an example from my own life. When I wrote The Miracle Morning, it published on 12/12/12, December 12, 2012. And when I wrote The Miracle Morning, essentially my original goal, I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, it was to change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And that was kind of a mission-driven way of phrasing this goal of reaching 1 million people, selling 1 million copies of The Miracle Morning. I was a self-published author. I didn't know how to sell books. It was really stepping out on faith, having unwavering faith that it was possible because I believed The Miracle Morning I had seen it change my life. I had seen it changed all of my clients' lives and hundreds of people I had taught in speeches. And I really believed that it could change anyone's life because I had seen it. And so I set this goal to change 1 million lives one morning at a time. And it was a 1-year goal, right? Because that's the arbitrary time frame. You know, it's like, all right, When should I set the goal for? Let's try to do it in a year. Change 1 million lives in 1 year. Sell 1 million copies in a year. I did everything in my power to achieve that goal. In fact, the second decision in the miracle equation is extraordinary effort. Okay, so the first is unwavering faith. The second is extraordinary effort. And that might sound like hard work, but it's a little bit more complicated. It's simpler. It's about consistency. If I were to define extraordinary effort in one word, it's consistency. It's to do one thing every day, at least one thing, and just make sure you check off that one thing that is measurable and meaningful and moves you closer to that miracle that you're trying to create, that ideal outcome. That's what extraordinary effort is. It's doing something every day to move you closer. So that first year that the Miracle Morning came out, here's what my extraordinary effort looked like. I did over 150 interviews on other people's podcasts, like this one. I did over 150 podcast interviews. I also published my own podcast so that I could reach people and nurture my community. So I did all these TV shows. I gave 36 speeches. So I did podcast interviews, TV interviews, speeches. I posted in the Miracle Morning Facebook group, the Miracle Morning community, every day for the entire year. That was my extraordinary effort. I did everything in my power to sell over 1 million copies and reach the goal. The question you asked me, Keith, was about failure, right? How do I overcome, or how do you deal with failure?
Right.
And that goal, or that paradigm, that lesson from Jim Rohn, that the purpose of a goal is not to reach the goal. The purpose of a goal is to develop the qualities and characteristics of someone who can reach goals, right? And so for me, I set the goal to reach 1 million people that year. You could say, in terms of the measurable goal, the measurable outcome, I failed miserably. I sold 13,000 copies of the Miracle Morning. If you do a little math, the goal was 1 million. I sold 13,000 copies, even though I did everything I could, TV shows, traveling the country, speaking, but I was 987,000 copies short of my goal.
That's
or
daunting.
98.7% short of the goal.
Yeah.
So by anyone's measure, that's a pretty bad failure. I want to share something very, 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 very important. When it comes to the miracle equation, maintaining unwavering faith, putting forth extraordinary effort until you reach your outcome, you have to circle the word until and underline it 3 times. Like, that's a key part of the concept. Is when you live this way, when you live with unwavering faith toward every goal you set, every outcome that you're working towards, every dream in your life, when you maintain unwavering faith and you put forth extraordinary effort, that consistency, you can't fail. The only variable is timing. It's only a matter of time before you get there. And I knew that because I practiced the miracle equation. I think I was 21 when I created that simple concept, and I started studying the world's most successful people. And I realized, wow, the world's most successful people, from Olympians and world champion athletes to CEOs and multimillionaires, and, however you define the world's most successful people, they establish unwavering faith, or they establish faith that they can do something they've never done before. That faith remains unwavering through the ups, the downs, the trials, the tribulations, the setbacks, the challenges, and what you might say the failures. And they put forth extraordinary effort, regardless of how long it takes, until they achieve their outcome. Was I discouraged? Absolutely. I was like, head in my hand, like, oh my gosh, I didn't even come close. And I'd have to pull out a calculator, but I think, at 13,000 books a year to reach 1 million books, that would have been 100 years or something like I wouldn't have lived that long. But I was committed until. Remember that word, until. Maintain unwavering faith, put forth extraordinary effort. That is the miracle equation, because that's how you create those tangible, measurable miracles, those results, those meaningful outcomes beyond the realm of what you believe is probable for you. And so for me, reaching 1 million people after I sold 13,000 copies the first year did not feel probable. It had felt like almost an impossibility, but I gave it everything I had year 2. And year 2, I sold 27,000 copies. It was a big jump, but I was still only at 40,000 copies, and
4% of your goal.
960,000 copies short of the goal.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, it took 6 years after I published the book that we finally surpassed 1 million copies sold. And again, it goes back to, when you live the miracle equation, unwavering faith and extraordinary effort, the only variable is timing, but you really can't fail. If you continue with those simple 2 decisions every day that you wake up, you maintain unwavering faith that you can reach your goals, and you put forth extraordinary effort by doing one thing every day that ensures you make progress. you don't have to slay the dragon all at once. You've got to make progress. And if you do those two things, eventually you get there. And the last thing I want to share, Keith, before I turn it over to you, what happens when you get there? And I can tell you from experience, human beings, we tend to be very impatient. And that's where our self-doubt often comes from. You go, man, I've been trying so hard. I didn't think it would take this long. And you start to doubt yourself. What I've found is that when you have this approach to achieving your goals, when you finally get there, here's what I want you to take away from this. When you finally get to the point in your life or in your business that you've been working so hard for so long, and you've almost given up so many times, as I did, when you finally get to that point you've been working for, you almost never wish it would have happened any sooner. Instead, you realize, you look back at your journey and you go, oh, it was supposed to take that long. The timing is almost always perfect. And you see in hindsight that it needed everything you went through, you needed to go through to learn what you needed to learn to become the person that you needed to be, to finally create that outcome that you were working so hard for so long. And so with that, I encourage you right now, if you're at all feeling like you're not where you want to be and it's taking you longer than you wanted, or you're not clear on what you want to do, just know this, that when you finally get there, the timing is going to be perfect. So with that knowledge, you can wake up every day and right now and every day be at peace with where you are while maintaining a healthy sense of urgency to move forward every day and do at least one thing that moves you in the direction of where you want to end up.
Oh, that's very well said, Hal. I think when someone contemplates a goal that they feel is insurmountable, when they live with, like you say, unwavering faith and extraordinary effort, I think there is an inflection point because it gets easier when you begin to develop the right kind of new habits. And I think the entrepreneurial coach, Dan Sullivan, summed it up really well. He's known for saying that you are already 100% self-disciplined to your own set of existing habits. So once you begin to change into a new set of habits, then you can begin to acclimate and get used to that new set of habits on the way to this goal that had seemed insurmountable. So think of it that way. It's really sort of habit building. Hal, do you have any last things to tell our audience? I mean, we're interested in being productive people here at Get Rich Education, being efficient with our effort expended. You teach something in your new book, The Miracle Equation, called the Faith Effort Feedback Loop, and how that makes it so that maintaining this unwavering faith and extraordinary effort gets easier and easier over time. Tell us what you mean by that in this faith effort feedback loop.
I always say you've got to do it in writing, and doing it in the form of an affirmation saying, for me, for example, was I am committed to changing 1 million lives one morning at a time. And I think I had in parentheses, sell 1 million copies of the Miracle Morning, right? Just to remind myself, okay, there's a specific thing you're trying to do here, but I'm committed to reaching 1 million people or 1 million lives one morning at a time. No matter what, there's no other option. That is the first step, is having that in writing and reinforcing it every day. Because again, you're reinforcing, I am committed to. It's not saying I want to do this thing. We don't get what we want. In life, we get what we're committed to. So when you start with the faith and you reinforce that every single day, it starts to feel real for you. And when it feels real, then you're more driven to start to take that action, do that one thing every day that moves you closer to simply living in alignment with your integrity and what you're affirming you're committed to every day. That integrity, your integrity alone, will drive you into the action. And the beauty of it is, once you take that action, now you start to feel empowered. You start to feel inspired. You start to feel that I'm deserving of the thing I'm committed to because I'm actually putting forth the work. So the point is that the faith leads to the effort, and then the effort reinforces the faith that you are both deserving and capable of what it is that you're working towards. And then reinforcing the faith reinforces the effort, and round you go. So as you establish faith and maintain unwavering faith, it fuels your effort, and then the effort fuels your faith, and your faith fuels the effort, and it gets easier and easier and easier every day. And all of a sudden, what felt like this new goal, this miracle that you were setting out to achieve, eventually becomes your norm, and you wake up every day and you just go through the motions that you've set forth, the habits that you've created that ensure that you're doing something every day that's moving you in the right direction.
After faith and effort, then you feel deserving, and you won't feel like so much of an imposter. You will deserve what you've earned. One interesting thing in your new book, The Miracle Equation, you say it's made up of two decisions that are completely counterintuitive to our human nature. So I want to learn more about that because I think the world is really full of paradoxes. For example, the less you think of money as something evil, the more money comes to you. If you're in pursuit of a relationship, the less desperate you act, well, then the more likely that you are to get it. So tell us about some of those counterintuitive decisions and why they're so unnatural for us to make.
We tend to only maintain faith in that which we believe is guaranteed outcome. I know that if I go to college and I just do the homework, I will get a degree. I don't know that if I start a business, it's going to survive, right? So it's counterintuitive to maintain faith in something. It's not a sure bet. We're very much conditioned throughout our entire childhood and young adult life to pursue certainty. We pursue certainty, right? Because the path is laid out for us. Hey, you show up to school, you pay attention in class, you take notes, you go home and do your homework, you study for your test, you pass your test, and then we will graduate you on to the next grade, right? And then you rinse and repeat that from age 5 or 6 until 22 if you graduate college. When in school are you given opportunities to step out on faith, on a limb, to do something that you've never done before and that possibly no one has ever done before? And then you have to develop that ability to have faith in yourself that you can do this thing. So it's counterintuitive because we never learned how to do it. For me, it started when I was 15 years old. I started my first DJ business. I was a mobile DJ with doing weddings and school dances, anniversaries. And my parents, thank goodness, they encouraged me to step out on a limb, step out on faith, and attempt to do this thing I had never done before and that none of my friends had ever done before. Again, I had failures and I had successes, and eventually it ended up being a success. And then I went down the path. What that opened my eyes to is, wait a minute, instead of just following the path that's given to me, go to school, go to college, get a job, often doing something that you hate, but you're doing it because it makes money. When I started DJing weddings and school dances and car shows and even at bars, which I lived in a small town, so I don't think that was legal, but that's what happened. But when that happened, I had a breakthrough. I went, wait a minute, like this doesn't feel like work for me. I love DJing and there's no one's telling me how much I can charge. And I was charging $100 an hour. So I'd get $100 an hour at 15 years old to, do a 4-hour wedding, and I'd get $400, which back then minimum wage was $4.25. So that would normally take 100 hours. So I flipped it from $4 an hour over 100 hours and flipped that to $100 an hour over 4 hours. And it showed me that you can actually create your own income based on something that you actually find interesting and enjoyable and fun. And I think that at 15 from on, I went, I will never do something I hate for an amount of money that someone else tells me I'm worth. I will always find opportunities where I am able to, number one, I enjoy it. I love what I do. And I'm able to create income based on my effort and my ingenuity, not the ceiling that somebody else imposes on me.
Yeah, you really saw early on that you don't really get outsized rewards in life if you just conform to a system and stay in an arena of certainty and normalcy. You can't stay in there if you ever want to do something extraordinary. So if someone really wants to live the life that they want to start living, just start living it. That's what I would tell somebody. Hal, you've had such an impact. You've really created a movement, and a movement is rare. A movement is something substantial because a movement moves on its own. So tell people where they can get your newest book, The Miracle Equation.
Thank you for that. If you go to miraclemorning.com, you can get Miracle Equation anywhere books are sold. But if you go to the hub is miraclemorning.com, that's the place where you'll see all my books there. I've written about a dozen books or so. And then you can join the Miracle Morning community. And also you can get on the Miracle Morning email list, which we don't sell anything. But the Miracle Morning movie is coming out on 12/12/2020. And I think the website for tickets will be up maybe by the time this comes out. I'm not sure. You can check out miraclemorning.com and hopefully there will be tickets for the movie on sale there.
Hal Elrod, it has been valuable and it's been time well spent. Thanks so much for coming on to Get Rich Education.
Thank you so much, Keith. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, an awe-inspiring story from tragedy and then a framework for goal achievement for you from Hal Elrod today. Hal's body was broken, his outer world was broken, but his inner world was strong and that shone through. Hal said that emotional pain is not created by anything outside of yourself, but all emotional pain that you've ever experienced is self-created by your resistance to your reality. We don't go for things that we believe are possible when we set goals, but rather probable. Your goal progresses from possible to probable to inevitable, and it starts with unwavering faith. That's what moves you along that progression. And really, you've got to be mindful that every great success that you achieve in your life, it's going to be built on top of a mountain of failure. That's just how it works. You know what I think? Really, if you're going to have a perpetual fear of anything, it might actually be good if you have a fear of normalcy. Normalcy is average. I think it's healthy to have a reasonable fear of being average, to have this fear of mediocrity. Talk about the miracle morning. I know that there's one thing that you did not wake up intent to do. You did not wake up to be mediocre. And if there's anything else that you need motivation to rise above that dreaded mediocrity when you're so deep inside the thundering herd that's all going the same direction such that you can't even see the horizon or where you're going next, keep in mind that, at least here on this earth, you are living your last life ever. If you're out there taking smart but inordinate risk in life, and someone wants to know what you're doing out there, hey, maybe just 3 words to them, last life ever, is enough to validate whatever you're doing. Hal Elrod has created a great framework for bringing this into your life, replacing fear with faith and turning the impossible into the inevitable through The Miracle Morning and now his newest book, The Miracle Equation. How awesome that this movement has become so substantial that there's a forthcoming Miracle Morning movie. There are a lot of ways to get involved in Hal Elrod's world. The hub is at miraclemorning.com. Whatever you want your future to be, the best way to predict your future is to create it. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.